Come on now, a master clock is for real audiophiles. If you don't have one, where on earth are your bragging rights? I've already made a video on what the benefits of a master clock might be, and I've linked it in the description. You can watch this video first though, specifically about the S.M.S.L G1 Master Clock. Hey, let's unbox it. It's complicated. First, I'm going to present to you the S.M.S.L G1 in all its glory. At this timestamp, I'll briefly mention the S.M.S.L D200 DAC that I'm going to use. I've linked my review of the S.M.S.L PL200 CD transport in the description, so I won't be covering that further here. There's an audio demonstration of the full system in use. You won't learn anything, but hey, we love music and we're here to have fun. And if the music doesn't suit your taste, Philistine, here's my roundup. Come on, the S.M.S.L G1 doesn't have even one single knob or switch. There isn't even a power switch. So if you're the kind of enthusiast or audiophile who likes to fiddle with stuff, well, there's nothing to fiddle with. There is a power-on indicator light, which I'll mention again in a mo. Otherwise, nothing at all on the front other than architectural scalloping. The back is just slightly more interesting with mains input, or you can use a 9 to 15 volt DC power source if you like. The manual warns not to use them together. Then 4 10 MHz clock outputs on BNC connectors. That's it. Oh, that indicator light placed so that it subtly shines down onto your surface. It kind of makes me think that whatever you have stacked up, the G1 should be on the bottom. Hey, I'm going to mention it again in another mo. What a fuss about a little LED. Bearing in mind that other manufacturers are available, I'm using the S.M.S.L PL200 CD transport as source, and the also S.M.S.L D200 DAC to turn digits into waveforms. From there, I can pipe the analog audio signal to a headphone amplifier, integrated or power amp, as I like. So the setup is simple, although there's a bit of a rat's nest of cables by the time you've finished. I've seen worse, much worse. So I think for a permanent setup, I'd want to try a bit of cable management, and in particular try to keep the mains cables away from anything else as much as possible. We don't want to upset those clock ticks, do we? As you saw in the unboxing, the G1 comes with a BNC to BNC cable. Nice, but this kind of implies that you're syncing a source to the G1 and outputting the source data to your DAC without the benefit of further master clock synchronization. I'd see this as halfway. So I asked Ayoshida Audio, who sent me the G1, also to send me a DAC with a clock input. Oddly enough, of all the DACs I've reviewed over the last couple of years, unless I've missed any, none has a clock input. So, with the S.M.S.L D200 DAC and an extra BNC cable sourced from Amazon, I've got a system. A system. I suppose I should really say that you can buy audiophile BNC cables if you want to. Here's the Audio Art Cable AAC statement, BNC to BNC. 436 GBP for half a metre. Oh, and 35 USD for the important cable cooker conditioning service. So that's my system. I'm taking the optical output of the PL200T into the D200 and the RCA outputs from the DAC into my audio interface. Then Fozzy V3 mono monoblock power amps, then, yay, my lovely Yamaha NS10M Studios. Bet you're jealous of those. There's really very little to say. Almost zero fiddle factor. So I've got my CD transport connected by BNC, my DAC connected by BNC. All I have to do is set the clock source in each. I'm sorry, this isn't going to be any more exciting, but really, this is all there is to it. Don't forget, there's music playing at... Oh, the indicator LED. I said I'd mention this again. The G1 needs to warm up to get the oven-controlled crystal oscillator up to temperature. So the LED flashes while the oscillator warms up. When it turns solid, you're good to go. You can be reading the CD booklet in the meantime. Who doesn't like a good warm-up before a session? I think that if you're considering buying a master clock, then you're going to be interested in the specifications. This is where you find out what you're getting for your money. I made the point in my previous video about master clocks in general that digital audio equipment is governed by a clock, normally internal rather than external. But whenever do we hear anything about the specification of the clock? I'm sure there must be exceptions, but among the equipment I've reviewed in my channel, I don't recall reading anything about clock accuracy in the specs. So what you're getting if you invest in a master clock with specs is certainty that the clock is good up to a certain standard. And you can seek third-party technical reviews to make sure that claims are accurate. So I'd be looking at two things, jitter and long-term accuracy. For the G1, we can see in this panel that the long-term accuracy is plus or minus 3 parts per billion. That, according to S.M.S.L's calculation, is 1 second in 10 years. I'd check it myself, but I don't think my calculator has enough digits. The frequency temperature characteristic is also claimed to be within plus or minus 3 ppb. I have to go to another panel to see the specs that would affect jitter. I'll let you read this spec for yourself. dBc per hertz isn't a concept I've got my head around yet. I promise I will, if my brain cells are up to it. But the key is that the spec is present and it's checkable. Oh, and look, there's a linear power supply. Audiophiles will like the sound of that. Now, the big question, the really big question, will you hear any difference? Will the edginess in digital music be totally gone? Will there be a cleaner, darker background? Will there be more clarity in the notes and space between them? Well, another reviewer heard all of that. I'm afraid I personally can't hear any difference. Maybe 20 years ago I could have, but I have to be realistic, and I'm not going to pretend to you that I can hear things that I can't. I can say that I don't hear any distortion, noise, frequency response or imaging problems, but I wouldn't expect that anyway from competent digital equipment. Anyway, check out other reviews for subjectivity and decide for yourself whether or not they're just making it all up. I'm going to move on. It's not a full review, but I'd like to show you a little about the S.M.S.L D200 DAC. So the S.M.S.L D200 DAC. I needed a DAC for my G1 review because I feel that just syncing the CD transport to the G1 isn't really the whole thing. If I'm going the master clock route, I want my full system synchronized. So the G1 drives the PL200T and the D200. And it has 2 more sync outputs if I ever want to expand the system further. So, keeping it brief, what's the biggest thing about this DAC? The really biggest thing. There's no headphone output. Clearly this is a strategic decision by S.M.S.L. They didn't just forget. But I think we've become accustomed to the idea of a combined DAC/headphone amplifier. Certainly I have. And needing to buy another box to create real sound might not be everyone's favourite. But I like to be an optimist. This allows you to customise your system further with a headphone amp of your choice, rather than casually accepting whatever headphone driving capability a combined DAC/headphone amp has. Another feature which you wouldn't know just from looking at the pics is that you can have a volume control or no volume control. So if your power amp doesn't have one, no prob. If it does, you can use that without the DAC's volume control confusing things. Okay, one more for this brief introduction to the D200. It has a clock input. Well, yes, of course you knew that. But since so many DACs don't, I'm very happy to emphasise this as a go-to feature. So I said I'd give you an audio demonstration, and I promised that you would learn nothing. I often like to demonstrate my review equipment, but you have to bear in mind that even if I include a wave download, your experience is limited by your own system. In this case, it's impossible to make a demonstration that's meaningful in any way, because all of the extra accuracy of the G1 is lost travelling through the internet and your own DAC. And a wave download wouldn't even have that extra accuracy anyway. But still, I'm sure you'd like to hear something, so I have a CDR I made myself, maybe around 25 years ago, of a recording I made, oddly enough, 35 years ago to the day, on good old-fashioned 16-bit DAT tape. The artist is Jaime Torres. Did I get that right? Or did I do a Hilaria Baldwin? And if you think I pronounced Hilaria wrong, well, you can let your suspicious mind judge on that. Anyway, let's listen. Watch out for the dynamics. The questions I have for you are, and please comment me your answers, do you think having a master clock will make your system sound better? Regardless of whether your system sounds better or different, do you just want one because you know it's the right thing to do? See you soon.